Hey everyone, and welcome to the Shared Cup podcast. This is episode 4, and today my guest Brynn Coy is going to share her personal story of how losing her dad helped renew her relationship with God, and how the faithfulness of her grandmother helped lead her in the right direction during such a hard time in her life. I'm Allison Liddick, and this podcast is for women who want to experience the overflowing love of God through our own stories. We pray that you are blessed by this message. Hello, and welcome to our podcast. I am your host, Allison Liddick, and I have Brynn Coy here today as my guest. Hey, Brynn.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. I cannot wait
for having me.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to dive in and have you share your story with us today. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So why don't we start by getting to know a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into your story so you can share it with everyone. So tell us a little bit about Brynn, who you are.
Okay, a little bit about me. So I am married. My husband's name is Matt. I have 3 kids, Hannah, Nathan, and Elena. Hannah is 18, Nathan is 16, and Elena is 7. So we have 3 kids, and I am a registered nurse and have been I've been in healthcare for 17 years, a registered nurse for 15. That's hard to believe because
Yeah.
I just keep getting younger. It's weird,
Isn't it?
I'd like to think, but.
So you are busy then with 3 kids.
Yes, and those different ages, it's like all different levels of busy at the same time, especially with our new life of homeschool.
Right, no kidding. Well, I want to dive into your story so that everyone can hear a little bit about what you have to share with us today. So I want to take it back to the beginning just so people have some context. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where the story begins?
So just so that it all makes sense, just a little bit kind of from my childhood. So I have 2 older sisters, both from my mom's first marriage. So technically they're my half sisters, but we were raised together. So we've never considered each other that. They're just my sisters. And then my dad was my mom's second marriage, which they separated when I was around 2 and then officially divorced when I was around 3. My mom got with my stepdad and later married him. My biological dad was kind of in and out of my life through my childhood. When I was around 9, he went to court and tried to fight to see me more at that point, but we really didn't have a close relationship until I was more into high school. So my dad then passed away in August 2017. He had a heart attack. And when I got the call from the coroner, I had a hard time even processing what he was telling me. Asked, can I call you back? And I just immediately hit the floor, hysterically crying. And looking back at that now, that was a pivotal moment in my life that I would never be the same person again. But going through that, I'd never lost anybody close to me like that before. My grandpa had passed away a couple years prior. I was very close with my grandparents. He had passed away a couple years prior, but he, at the end of his life, had Alzheimer's, and he was 91. So he had lived this great full life. We knew that he was passing. He was in hospice care. We got to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Which that was hard. But to lose somebody who's too young, suddenly, unexpectedly, was really hard. So going through that, my husband tried to be there for me, but didn't really know how. He didn't know what I needed. And quite honestly, I didn't even really know what I needed at the time. I started having a few more adult beverages than the usual. Through the emotional train ride I was on, my health started to suffer. So I started to seek counseling. to try to help that. But it was like, no matter what I did, nothing really seemed to.
So tell me a little bit about the feelings and the emotions that you were going through. So you got that call. Obviously, you weren't expecting it. Out of the blue, what were some things that you were feeling that made you seek those things?
I felt completely alone in what I was experiencing because I was my dad's only child. He wasn't remarried, so he lived by himself. So I was it for him. So I had to take care of everything, his estate, condo, car, retirement. Like, I had to take care of it all. And I'd never done this before. And so I was going through that completely alone. And even just the loss that I was feeling, no one else was feeling what I was feeling or going through what I was going through. So I felt completely alone holding on, with those emotions. And so through that, I mean, I remember having a conversation with my mom, and I said, is there really even a God? And she said, don't you dare say that, but that was where I was at in my life at that moment. I felt abandoned and alone.
Yeah.
And growing up, I knew who God was, mostly from my grandmother. My grandmother is like no other woman that I don't even know if there are many people like her, but I was blessed to have a grandmother like I did. I spent a lot of time at her house when I was a kid growing up. And even as I got older, I made it a point to visit her on a weekly basis. But that woman, I mean, she had a special relationship with God. And if there was something you needed prayed for, you took it to grandma, because if she prayed it, it was going to be so. And just watching her, how she lived out her life. She got down on her knees every morning and prayed. She read her Bible. She went to church every week. She taught Sunday school. But then she was the most loving, patient, kind, gentle person. I never heard her say a negative word about anybody or anything ever. And what I didn't realize then that I realize now is she was planting seeds in me.
Yeah.
So going through the pain of losing my dad, and questioning God through that, there was then a moment where I don't remember where I was going, but I was driving in the car and I was alone. And this song came on the radio. And I know for a lot of people, music is therapy, and it's definitely that for me. And I love all kinds of music. I like to sing, even though I maybe shouldn't. I don't know.
Yes, you should. Keep singing, girl.
But I do. And so music really speaks to me emotionally. And sometimes I will actually listen to certain kinds of music or certain songs when I'm feeling a certain way, because it just helps me process.
Yeah.
But this song came on. It's called Different by Micah Tyler. And there's a version where because he wrote the song a couple years prior to this version, he tells a story in the beginning. And he says, 2 years ago, I wrote this song and now it carries a different meaning. And he talks about multiple things that he is facing, circumstances he's facing. And he prays, Jesus, change these things, stop these things from happening. And he says, for whatever reason, he chose not to change those things yet. And so he shifted his prayer then to, God, change me so that I'm able to go through these things that this where you're taking me, so that I can get through it. And that really spoke to me, because I didn't want to continue living the way that I was, feeling the way that I was. I wanted to change. I wanted to change me. And so at that point, I feel like God spoke to me and made me realize, okay, I can't control the circumstances, because then the following April 2018, I lost my grandma.
Oh.
Within that same, within a year.
Yeah.
And so we can't control circumstances around us, but we can control us. And so at that point, I realized I needed to make a change.
So tell me about your grandma, Brynn, like the things that you were saying that she did or that you saw. How was that helping you now that you're seeing, or you're at the point where you're questioning, is there a God? Is there really a God? You're hearing this song that's impactful for you. How did just remembering and knowing those seeds that were being planted by your grandma, how was that impacting you at that time in your life? Or were you reflecting on things that you saw her doing? How did that help, just having your grandma?
Going through the loss of my dad and then losing her, I mean, when you experience loss, you can't help but reflect on your life and on life. And am I living life the right way? Am I living it to its fullest?
Yeah.
You appreciate the relationships and the people that are around you because you don't know when somebody's time is going to come. And so it causes you to appreciate life and look at how you're living. And so I often would think back to how she lived.
Yeah.
Because she lived with so much joy and love and peace. And I wanted that. I wanted to live like her. And praise the Lord, I was given a grandmother where I had an example.
Yeah.
I had an example in my life of how to live that way. So I knew how she lived. And I wanted to dig into how she achieved that.
Mm-hmm.
And so even just the simple example of, because I was at her house often for sleepovers and things like that, she would get up every morning, go in the bathroom where it was dark, close the door, and she would get on her knees in front of the bathtub.
Wow.
And I know this because I sneak in and open up the door looking for grandma and
you're in
she'd
there
be on her knees. It was like she had a place to go in the dark. And it was just what she did. And so at the time, as a kid especially, I never thought anything of it. Even as I got older, didn't ever think anything of it till I started to realize, through what I was experiencing, okay, I need to change. I need to change my life. How am I going to achieve that? Well,
Yeah.
The only way that I can achieve that is with God's help. And so that caused me to then go, okay, well, what did she do? Well, she prayed every morning. She read her Bible. So I kind of started to dig into, how does God say we should live? And the fruits of the Spirit. There's a verse in Galatians, and it tells you what the fruits of the Spirit, what they are: love, peace, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. She had every single fruit of the Spirit. And so I started to dig in later into, how do I get those gifts?
Yeah. What an encouragement for grandmothers out there, or mothers that maybe aren't seeing that fruit yet, but are planting those seeds. So I love that. Like, just knowing that you were watching that cute little Brynn peeking in the door and seeing grandma on her knees, probably praying for you.
Mm-hmm.
And later. It's amazing.
Yeah, I actually, in the process of my journey of, just seeking God and getting to know him, there came a point where, as I was learning all these things, that, she lived this way because this is what God's word says. And this is what she had learned, all the things. And so I started to go, why didn't she teach me these things? Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't she share this Bible verse with me? But she didn't have to. She was planting seeds that were going to impact me when I needed them, that God was going to grow through a relationship with him, that we have so much more of an influence on people by how we live, not by what we say.
Yeah.
She lived it out. She gave an example. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus was sent here to be an example to us of how to live our life.
Yeah.
And so the ultimate goal, right, is to live our life the way Jesus did. And so when I learned about that, I'm like, that was my grandma. That was how she lived. And she didn't have to tell me.
Right.
She showed me.
Oh, I love that so much.
So I was in a Bible study at the time, and that I had recently joined through, all of this. I was like, all right, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this Bible study. And which I had done many Bible studies over the years, marriage studies, self-help books, all that kind of stuff. Even through this time of going through things, I was looking back at old journals and some of the things I was experiencing that I wanted to change about myself, I had written about years ago. And nothing had at this point really changed. And the loss of my dad was then just increasing those things. So I knew I needed to do something different, but I wasn't really sure what it was. I'm like, I'm going to join this Bible study. This is going to be good. I'm going to get back into, working with God on things. And one of the women in the Bible study told me about the church I attend now, City Gate Church in Lebanon. And the first message that I heard, which I watched online for the first time before actually going, spoke to me in volumes, where I knew, and I hadn't, over the years, I would go to church. We would go to church as a family, but not consistently. There'd be periods where we'd go, and then we wouldn't go all summer long because we'd go down to the lake, or it was more like this wishy-washy churchgoer. And so after I lost my dad, we were not going to church at all, and I didn't want to. And so sitting in my room watching Citygate online for the first time, I knew in that moment I needed God. That the only way that I was going to get through this pain, to heal, to change me, I needed his help. And so we started going to Citygate, and it'll be 2 years in September. And we haven't missed a Sunday since we started going. And through Citygate, God has helped me to see that I'm not going through this alone, that he is with me. He will help me. I need him. I can't do this without him. He is my hope. He is my strength. And there's a Bible verse. It's Psalms 46:1. It says, God is our refuge and strength and everlasting help in trouble. And so, all of those little things leading up, hearing the song, where I know God used that to speak to me because music speaks to me. So he used that. And then I started the study, and this woman tells me about this church, and we start going to this church. And from that point forward, just recognizing God is there. He was there. He's been there the whole time. I was ready to give up on him. He wasn't giving up on me. And so I started to then seek God on a regular basis, which was something new for me. I've always known that I should, but I just wasn't doing it. I wasn't making it a priority. And I knew in that moment, for the moment I was living in, that I couldn't do it without him.
Yeah.
So, and I wanted to know him like my grandma knew him. She had a special connection. We always would say, Grandma and God, they're tight. Like, she talks to him, and he gives her what she wants. Like, they have this thing. And I wanted that. I wanted that for myself. I wanted that for my children. I want that for my grandchildren. I thought, I want to be, Grandma's not here anymore. I want to fill her shoes.
Yeah.
And she knew God, and I wanted to know God the way that she did. And making that a priority and seeking God and getting into God's word and getting to know him and what he says and who he is, I have come to know him in a way that I never have, and in a way that I never even knew that I could.
Wow. I love all the different things that God used just to lead up to that moment. It seems like something changed in your heart. So what do you think it was?
Honestly, I think it was when I heard that song. And I just started bawling. And I, right then in my car, asked God, change me. And I encourage you all to listen to that song. I think we all have things that we'd like to change about ourselves. We know what our weaknesses and our strongholds are, but doing something about it is is different. And in the song, he talks about God changing him, but changing, like taking everything of him out. And he wants all of God, and he wants just to be the light that everybody sees, that everybody sees the change that only God can do. God prepares us in ways that we don't even know. He's working in ways that we don't even see. Even just my grandma planting those seeds that even in that moment, I didn't realize yet, right? It took me some time to just, but my mind, my heart kept going back to her through process of me learning how to live this new life. And so God's a heart changer, and you can't necessarily explain exactly how. It just happens when you talk to him and you just say, okay, God, I can't do this without you. You can have my life. I know you have a plan for me, plans to prosper, not to harm, plans to give me hope in a future, Jeremiah 29:11. And I was believing that. And I, those seeds that came from my grandma, they were in my heart, even though our circumstances can make me go in a different direction, right? God's a heart changer. He will get you back in the right lane if you ask him to. Just little by little, day by day, sitting down with the Bible, with my study, he spoke to me often.
So I know you mentioned church and that you had kind of stopped going to church after everything happened with your dad, but then you started going to church again after a friend shared with you, which friends that are listening, share where you go to church and invite people to church, because, you never know what place people are in. Like, Brynn, you needed that at that moment. So what keeps you going to church? Like, why do you go?
So multiple things. And I guess you could say what initially kept me going was, of course, the message that the pastor gave. I mean, it's powerful every Sunday. But then through time of just continuing to go, it's like that was the draw, right? The excitement and the warm, fuzzy feeling and well, everybody's happy to be here. There must be something here. But then as the pastors continue to give the message, you continue to get to know the people that are there, and you get to know some of their stories. And, I serve in the church now. I'm part of the church, but it taught me you can have your own personal relationship with God through Jesus and experience the Holy Spirit. It's not just something that's there. You can read the Bible, you can go to church, but are you experiencing? And what I've personally learned is that it is the time that I take in prayer, in quiet time, with the Bible, with a devotional, with a Bible study. It's the time that I'm personally taking to get to know who God is, who Jesus is, what Jesus did for us, why Jesus came, so that we could have a connection to God, so that we could have a personal relationship. And through creating in a personal relationship, which is a choice that we make, it is a choice I make every day to sit down and make God and Jesus and his word a priority. But it is through me seeking that personal relationship that I experience it.
I love that, girl, man.
And my church helps to achieve that every week.
Awesome.
God has used Citygate to help me learn how to do that.
Awesome. So I love what you were saying, because I'm just thinking back to that moment in the car where you said, God, change me, just like Micah Tyler did when he wrote the song. He changed his prayer to change me. So you asked, and then you started taking action, which I love that, because it is a two-way, it is a relationship. It's a two-way thing, right? You asked, now you had to move. You had to start doing things. You had to start praying. You had to start reading. You started going to church. You joined a Bible study. And not to change yourself, but you helped create that room in your heart to let him change you.
Mm-hmm.
I love so much, because the action piece, I think, is where people fail. Like you said before,
Mm-hmm.
they don't take those steps.
When you say create space, that is exactly what you have to do. I quit going to the gym so that I could make space, and now I've figured out how to do both. But initially I thought, this is going to be a part of my life. Something has to be removed. And when we're saying yes to something, we're saying no to something else. So the gym had to take a back seat to my relationship with God. And I'm glad that it did. And now he's helped me to balance it all out. Right.
Right.
But, he took my weakest moment and used that to change me. And there's a verse that I love. It's 2 Corinthians 12:9. And it says, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me.
That's good. So that's exactly what he did in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
And, we're called to share our testimony to help others. So I hope that all of you that are listening, I hope that this has blessed you in some way. But I just want to encourage everyone that if we draw near to God, he will draw near to us. And that's James 4:8, come near to God and he will come near to you. But what we're facing in our world right now, God is there. He knew that this was going to happen. And I believe that through this, he is transforming lives, that people are coming to know him, especially Easter, just being perfectly in the midst of this. This is a time for God to work his miracles in us and do a healing on his people. He loves us unconditionally. So if you don't know him, profess with your mouth that he is the Lord. If you haven't done that, now is the time. What do we have to lose? We have so much to gain. If you need any guidance or help with that, or you're curious to know or want to know what I've learned works for me, I'm absolutely open to you contacting me on my Facebook page, which is Brynn Coy, or through email as well, which is brynncoy@gmail.com. We're in this together, right? That's what they keep saying on everything. We're in this together, but we really, truly are in this together.
Well, I am thankful that in that moment, you were seeking God, even though you thought you weren't. And I'm so thankful that your grandma was that example in your life, and that you had that example of what's possible. And just to know, for God to bring that to the front of your mind in that moment is huge. Mm-hmm. To know that there's peace, to know that there's love and kindness that you can experience. Mm-hmm. So I'm thankful that you didn't just keep trying to fix it yourself and going down that path that leads to nowhere good. So I'm thankful for you taking that step and committing to God and asking him to change you, which I love that you share that, because if you ask him to change you, he will change you. So I'm proud of you, girl, for taking that step and taking the action. I know there's a lot more to what he's doing in your life, which I do want you to come back and share some more stories with everyone, because I think people can learn a ton. Thank you for sharing your testimony with everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Brynn, thank you for sharing this encouragement with everyone. And I look forward to having you back on the show again.
I look forward to being back and sharing the specific details of how I've, figured some things out. I don't have it all figured out, but
Brynn's got a lot to share, so I cannot wait to have her back, just to show the different things, because the story doesn't end when you receive Jesus. That's where things begin, and it's just beautiful. So I can't.
And it's still going,
and it will go forever. Like you said, we're always learning more about him, and we are humans, and there's more that he reveals to us. So Thank you for sharing this, and thank you for your grandma and her example, and again, encouragement to all the grandmas out there. keep praying, keep being the
And the
example.
grandmas to be, right? We're all going to be grandmas someday.
For everyone. I mean, the example really is keep planting seeds. You might not even get to see it come to be, but God promises that he will see it through, and you are planting those seeds in the lives for generations to come. But thanks for sharing your story, Brynn. We will have you back soon, and just tune in to all the listeners out there to the next podcast. We will have another podcast releasing next Thursday at 9 a.m. But thank you, Brynn, so much again for being on and sharing your story.
Thanks again for having me and listening. It's an honor to share what God has done for me.
Well, thank you again, and we will see you soon.
Thank you for joining us today for the Shared Cup podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember that each one of us has a story that shows the overflowing love of God. If you want to be a guest on our podcast, put a comment below and we'll send you the link to apply. Have a blessed day, and thank you so much for joining us.